Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March JRBP virtual member speaker series. Hi, Darlene. Nice to see a friendly wave there. So glad to have everybody with us. My name is Todd Wilkinson. I am the project manager for the James River Basin Partnership, and I will be your host this evening. Just a couple of ground rules before we get started. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to get signed in, and then we'll get started. But if we could, when we get the presentation rolling and ready to go, if you would please go ahead and turn your cameras off. That way that will help with the overall broadcast as far as bandwidth goes. Then we'll also ask everybody to make sure that they're muted. If you have a question, the chat feature is where we'll put questions, and Brent and I will be monitoring that. And at the end of the program, the end of the presentation, Brent and I can take those questions. We can direct those to Mary and Ashley. And so that way we're moving quickly as far as the presentation goes and making sure that we get to cover all of the major points. So next month in April, and I don't have the exact date in front of me, we'll be sending that out to attendees here in just a few minutes. Curtis Copeland from the city of Branson, who is the president of the Society of Ozarkian Hillcrofters, will be speaking about his use of GIS to track Ozarks culture in the James River Basin. So I think that'll be a really fantastic presentation. Curtis has been doing quite a lot of great things. So we'll be sending some more information out about that. And just to also remind you of our upcoming outdoor education series next Tuesday at Springfield Brewing Company in conjunction with SBC and also 37 North Expeditions. We'll be doing a session on water filtration and why great beer needs clean water, specifically Blue Canoe Pale Ale, our own beer. So we'll have some more information about that as we get towards the end of the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Culler, the Executive Director of Stream Teams United, and also Ashley Packwood, our AmeriCorps Vista placement. That's not correct, I know, but it just came to mind right now. And they're going to tell us all about paddle mow.
Great, thank you, Todd. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. And for everyone, you should be able to see, I also dropped a PDF of the presentation into the chat box. So it's there and feel free to download it and reference it in the future. I just want to thank James River Basin Partnership for inviting me to present this tonight. I grew up in the James River Basin just north of Springfield Lake, and when I was in high school, the James River Basin Partnership formed, and I started hearing some of these positive outreach messages about water quality, and I really got hooked by some of the initial outreach efforts of James River Basin Partnership, and it sparked an interest in me to follow water as a career. So it's really great to be here tonight, and I really appreciate all the work that James River Basin does for my home watershed. So can everyone see the presentation okay? Okay, great. Yes, so tonight I'm going to be talking about the Stream Teams United Paddle Mow program, and we began this program in 2016. It began when our previous executive director, Holly Neal, was able to go experience the Paddle Georgia event. And Paddle Georgia is an event hosted by the Georgia River Network. And so Holly and Rob Hunt, and if anyone remembers Rob Hunt, Rob used to live in the Springfield area. Now I believe he's in the Columbia area. But Holly and Rob traveled to the Paddle Georgia event, I believe in 2015, to see what it was all about. And they came back and brought with them a lot of information. And then they worked together with some of our partners to design the first paddle mow trip that occurred in 2016. And so you may have heard of this before, but we have our own website. We have our Stream Teams United website at streamteamsunited.org, but we also have a paddle mow website at paddlemow.org. Okay, so I'm showing the map now here of our Missouri River route, and this is for the 5-day 100-mile trip on the Missouri River. Now we currently offer 2 trips in our paddle mow program. One is on the Missouri River, one is on the Current River, and I'm going to talk about both of those educational trips tonight. But our original trip that we started in 2016 begins in Hermann, Missouri, and travels the last 100 miles of the Missouri River through the confluence with the Mississippi River. And so along the way, we begin in Hermann, we stop in New Haven, Augusta area, Washington, St. Charles, and then finally flowed into St. Louis over 5 days. Okay, so if you can imagine, taking people down a river for 100 miles is not something that one person can do by themselves, and it's not something that one organization can do by themselves either. And so this all began because of collaboration between partners, and it continues that we rely on partners to be able to make this possible. One of our founding partners is Magnificent Missouri, and they're a nonprofit that formed recently, and they work to basically conserve the last 100 miles of the Missouri River along the Katy Trail and promote conservation in that lower Missouri corridor from Hermann down to the confluence. So they helped us start the Paddle Mow program, and they continue to be partners today. We also partner with Missouri River Relief. I know a lot of people know Missouri River Relief. They've adopted the Missouri River as a stream team and do great work. Other local stream teams, such as Greenway Network, that's in the St. Charles region, and League of Watershed Guardians, which is located in St. Louis. They also help us with this project. And then Earth's Classroom, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Earth's Classroom is an educational nonprofit out of Rosebud, Missouri, and they help provide our on-water guiding and education. And then we have a number of different organizations and businesses that help each year, and Alpine Shop in St. Louis has been one of those that has helped us many years to be able to they've actually provided kayaks to participants that need to borrow one. They've helped with some of our shuttling and river guiding as well. And so then additionally, other contributors, the Conservation Department, Bass Pro Shops, the Conservation Heritage Foundation, Conservation Foundation of Missouri Charitable Trust. We've had partnerships with the Missouri Humanities Council that's helped to bring out some interesting speakers and music for the program. And then also, I'd like to mention Missouri American Water Company. They have a 12-person canoe that provides an option for people that may not want to paddle individually. So they've been a sponsor in that way. Also, Lotsie and Rick Holton, who Lotsie is actually a descendant of William Clark, and she has helped our organization and stream teams in many ways and helps promote Missouri as the Great River State. And then Dan and Connie Burkhart are the founders of Magnificent Missouri. So we really appreciate all these people, and we could not do the annual event without our partners. Okay, so I'd like to say this Paddle Mow program we do is much more than just a paddle down the river. We have a wealth of education that is also provided to participants. And so we try to change it up each year, but we've had a variety of topics and a variety of educators. And so participants on this journey have had opportunities to learn about a big variety of things, from birds to macroinvertebrates, river ecology, the history of the different towns along the river. We had a great presentation a couple years ago from a group of Native Americans that came out and dressed in Native American, culture, and provided us with a lot of great information. And so also hitting on the Lewis and Clark expedition. So a lot of great education also occurs on the journey. Okay, so this graph kind of shows our attendance, and the blue graph are the number of participants that we've had each year, and then the yellow graph shows the number of states that we've had. In 2016 was our inaugural year, and it began with a smaller trip, about 35 people, and just a couple states represented. We grew the event in 2019 to almost 80 paddlers, which we've decided that about 80 paddlers is the maximum number of people we would want on this type of trip, because we just start to outgrow some of the camping facilities that we stay at. And also, when you're also trying to do education, you can't have several hundred people and provide a quality presentation. And so we've actually hosted people from 17 states in the first 5 years, and then I don't have 2020 on this graph. We were able to host the event in 2020, but we had half the capacity. We had a lot of COVID-19 precautions, and so we limited it to 40 participants in 2020. Okay, so why do we paddle mow? What is the purpose as a nonprofit for carrying on this program? Well, for one, it's a great opportunity to connect people to Missouri's waterways. And through this, we are the Missouri Stream Team Watershed Coalition. We use the event to help promote the Missouri Stream Team program. A lot of people know about the program, but there's a lot of people that don't know about the program. And then also, like I've mentioned, the education. It's a great educational opportunity, and it's a way for us to promote Missouri as the Great River State. As we bring out paddlers to the river, we are also continuing to build the community of river stewards in our state. And so, when the paddlers sign up, we also try to connect them with opportunities to do more activities in the future by keeping them connected through our e-newsletter, keeping them connected through Facebook. And so through this work, we're continuing to build that community of river stewards. And one of the things that I think is one of the most important things to think about with this program is just the ability to break down barriers for people to experience a multi-day river trip. And so, I might think about, okay, well, I would like to go paddle 100 miles down the Missouri River. Well, for me as an individual, that idea can present a lot of barriers because, barriers could be, well, I may not have anybody to go with, and I don't feel safe doing that by myself. Another barrier could be, I don't have anybody to pick me up at the end. Or another thing is, I may not feel comfortable paddling on the river. I've never been on the Missouri River before. Other questions are, where am I gonna camp? What am I gonna eat? All these things that are the logistics of how would you spend multiple days on a river create a lot of planning needs. So the beauty of Paddle Mow is that with Stream Teams United, we basically handle all the planning other than we say, you need to bring your gear and we tell you what gear to bring, and you need to show up to the event. And after that, just follow the guides, follow our instructions, and we will take care of that for you. Now, this event does serve as a fundraiser for Stream Teams, and that was kind of one of the original purposes when we modeled the event off of the Paddle Georgia event. I'd say another reason, it's fun. And we're going to hear from Ashley Packwood later, who she participated as a first-time participant this year. But, it is fun. And in today's world, in all the trials and challenges that we go through, I think having something that we do that it just because it's fun is okay as a nonprofit. That's a service to provide something that's fun for people to do. And finally, related to that, time in nature is healthy. It's good for us to be able to escape our normal daily lives and get out into nature for multiple days. And I don't know if most people are probably familiar with Andy Osmeyer, who writes for the Joplin Globe, but I saw a quote that he wrote in an article just a week or so ago, and he was quoting Thomas Hart Benton. And Thomas Hart Benton said, "Man needs some areas of escape to the natural world from which he came. He'll need all the more of these in the future." And so I think that there's a real truth to that, a lot of times as natural resource agencies, we do river stewardship because we're trying to save the ecosystem and save the biodiversity. But there really is a human component to the work we're doing. And it's good for us to be with people, especially in a year when we've been disconnected. And it's good for us to spend time in nature. Okay, for some reason my slide's not advancing. Let's try again. Okay, there we go. Okay. So education. Now the next few things, I have just a lot of pictures, just so you can kind of get a glimpse of what the journey is like. And I will say that some of these pictures are from 2018, 2019, which were before COVID. Some of the pictures are from 2020 when we had this with a smaller group. So you'll be able to tell the difference. This was from a non-COVID year. But one of our lead guides and educators is Bill Miles with Earth's Classroom. And so here he's just providing some before the trip education about how to navigate the Missouri River Channel. And then again, this is 2020. So you can see the difference. We're socially distanced and we're masked up. And so, you know, it's a fun time on the river with lots of people. I know when I was in the Springfield area, for 1 year had some friends that we would go on bike rides around the city of Springfield together. Maybe sometimes 30 to 40 people. We're kind of a bicycle gang. So it's kind of similar, you know, it's fun to ride your bike by yourself or go paddling by yourself. But sometimes if you can get a big group of people together, it makes it all the more fun. And this is another one of our stops. This is in New Haven. So that last photo was us launching in Hermann on what we call day one. And this is a shot from the New Haven ramp. And it's kind of a neat photo. If you can see, there's a airplane flying through that photo. We just caught it at the right time. Again, a picture of Bill Miles, who serves as one of our lead guides. And Bill is a ACA certified instructor at the highest level, and he provides a lot of paddling expertise and also just a lot of knowledge about natural resources. There's Bill again, providing some instruction during one of our lunch breaks. And Bill's wife, Jody, she also serves as one of the lead on-water educators, and she does an absolutely phenomenal job. Honestly, Jody is one of the best natural resource interpreters I have ever heard, and so we are just very lucky that she's been able to participate with us from the beginning and serve as one of our lead educators. So here we have just a picture of Jody providing some education while on the river. And again, just another river picture. And this was from this year. So the Missouri River trip is scheduled for September 22nd through 26th this year. And we've lucked out. I feel like living in Missouri, it'd be hard to pick a good week to do really anything and know what the weather's going to be. But I feel like this late September time has been fairly favorable for us for the last few years. This year we did have some of the first stand-up paddleboard paddlers, and that was a first, and I was kind of unsure how they would do, but we had a couple and they did great. And then behind the stand-up paddler, you can see the Missouri American Water 12-person canoe. This year we socially distanced and only had 4 or 5 people in that canoe that would normally hold 12 people. One of the things this year, the river was lower, so it allowed us to spend some time on some of the sandbars. And so for anyone that's never been on the Missouri River, you know, when the river's lower, you have some large expanses of sandbars and some, we try to plan time to do some exploring. But, you know, it's not all sand, it's also can be muddy. That's why we have, you know, it's the big muddy. Okay, so briefly, I'd just like to mention some of the volunteers that make this possible. And I've mentioned, you know, we really can't do this alone. So several of our stream team volunteers from the St. Louis area help out with our Missouri River trip. And this is Sarah Wright, who's on the stream team 168, the great 168 stream team. We also have Missouri River Relief brings out their motorized boat that provides and serves as a safety boat in case there is a need to transport paddlers. They also transport our lunch and water coolers, and they also provide security for the boats each night when we're at the river. So those are some of our volunteers from Missouri River Relief. And this is our board president, Susan Rassman, who's from the Rolla area, and she's very active as well. And this is Perry Whitaker, who is actually the state director of Missouri's ACA chapter, I believe. Maybe I'm not saying that exactly right, but he's our state director for the American Canoe Association here in Missouri. And he serves as a safety paddler, and he also works at the Alpine Shop in St. Louis. Oh, and there I am. Occasionally, I do have an opportunity to get water. The other person in this picture is Eric Otto, who's been one of our safety paddlers for the last few years as well. And then just a couple pictures. Usually I am running around trying to make sure that the next thing happens, but occasionally, like I said, I am able to get out on the river. And then the picture on the right is me during COVID handing out granola bars. So I never thought maybe I would look like that in my career, but sometimes things just happen, and you never know what the future may hold. And we definitely learned that in 2020. Okay, so logistics. If you can only imagine taking people, and when we were in 2019, we had 80 paddlers and about 20 staff. We typically have about one support person for every 4 or 5 paddlers. And so we do have a lot of people that are really serving as the ground crew or the on-water crew. But yeah, these signs kind of sum up the logistics, which way are we going? We're going downstream, obviously. I'd like to thank Bass Pro. In 2018, we applied for a grant through Bass Pro Shops, and they provided us some funding to purchase this enclosed trailer and put graphics on it. And so this is the trailer that we use to haul participants' gear down the river. And so that's one question participants usually have, is do I need to pack all my stuff in my canoe for 5 days? And the answer is no. All you take on the river is your day gear that you need, just your water bottle, your life jacket. And we will transport all your camping gear down the river. And this is one of our ways to do it. So this is a photo from 2019, which was our largest group, I believe. Or this actually may have been, this was 2018, I believe. But anyway, this was a stop at Pelican Island, and Pelican Island is an island just upstream from the confluence with the Mississippi, and it has really a lot of cool places to explore and petrified wood. And so we always stop here for lunch and let people just explore the island for a couple hours. And again, the 12-person canoe on the Missouri River. Okay, so each year, I mentioned, this program serves as a fundraiser. It is an opportunity for education. We also try to have some type of theme each year. And so this is just an example of one of the themes we had back in 2019. We received a grant to supply ourselves with some equipment for invasive honeysuckle removal. And so we used the Paddle Mow event to try to increase awareness about invasive honeysuckle, and also provide some scholarships through this grant. And that's another part of Paddle Mow. Each year we do try to get funding through sponsors or grants for scholarships, so that we can continue to break down those barriers to get people on the river. And so scholarships is one of those areas that we really try to focus on. And then in 2020, this year, it happened to be the 30th anniversary of the Katy Trail. And we partnered with Magnificent Missouri to create a commemorative video. I think we're going to show that later after Ashley and I finish a presentation. But that was a great opportunity this year to just recognize the work of all the people that have made the Katy Trail possible as we float down the Missouri River alongside this, nationally recognized trail. Okay, so those were some pictures from the Missouri River trip. Again, that trip this year is scheduled for September 22nd through the 26th. We typically try for the third week in September, or third or fourth week in September for that. In 2019, we started a new educational trip called Paddle Mo Ozarks. And the route for this trip is 25 miles of the Upper Current River from Cedar Grove down to Upper Round Spring. And so this year, our Paddle Mo Ozarks trip is scheduled for October 9th through the 11th. And, you know, if you've been on the Current River, you know that it's just an absolute gem. It's just a world-class stream. And this is one of those photos. And we've had, in just 2 years, so we've had 2 years for this trip, we've had people from Kentucky, South Dakota, additional states. You know, it's great to be able to share this with both Missourians, but then also people from out of state that, again, they may have a barrier in thinking, I'm going to go to Missouri and do a multi-day trip. Well, you know, here's a way to do it without having to figure out a lot of those logistics. And then this was an image from this year at Cedar Grove before we launched, and we had Ruth Maxwell from the area that she came and shared with us about the history of the area and brought some historic photos. And we were able to cook lunch one day on the river, and obviously we were all masked up and gloved up this year, but that was really fun. And I think Ashley's going to share a little bit more about the food. But one thing with the Paddle Mo programs is we provide all the food, we provide all the meals, and so paddlers don't have to worry about what they bring with them. Try to serve good food, which Ashley's going to touch on too. Okay, so our itinerary for this year, again, we are looking at 25 miles of the Upper Current. We are headquartering at Echo Bluff State Park and limiting it to 40 participants. And we have participating stream teams, local stream teams that help us. And they are Scenic River Stream Team Association, the Big Piney River Stream Team Association. And we started the Paddle Mo Ozarks trip through a seed grant from the LAD Foundation. So I also just want to recognize them as well. Now, I guess I'm going to introduce Ashley. Now, the one thing I did want to mention, you know, you maybe think, well, what does the Missouri River trip or the Ozarks trip have to do with the James River Basin partnership? So we started the Paddle Mo Ozarks program in 2019, and I've spoken with James River Basin Partnership. We do have some interest in potentially organizing a trip on the James River, and so the details on that are key, because to make that happen, we have to be sure we can figure out where we're going to camp and what the shuttling would be and how much that costs, and can we turn that cost into something that is reasonable for people to participate in. So anyway, stay tuned. We're going to be doing some more research and seeing if bringing something like this to the James River would be something we could do. And like I said, it's my home river where I grew up, so I'd be really excited to see if we can make that happen. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to Ashley, and Ashley and her husband Andrew were able to come as first-time participants this year. Ashley has been serving as an AmeriCorps member with James River Basin Partnership and also jointly with Stream Teams United since last May. And they came and volunteered for the event and did just an awesome job. And here you can see helped us with our additional hand washing station and so forth. My last slide before I turn it over to Ashley, I just have one final slide that has our Facebook group. And so if you're not yet on our Facebook group, you can find it. It's just, you know, search Paddle Mo. We have over 1,000 members now in this group. It started as just the participants from one of the years, and we've just let it grow. So it's a great way to connect people interested in paddling to all the other things that are stream teams and healthy rivers, and connect them with some stewardship and advocacy and education opportunities. Okay, well, Ashley, would you like me to stop my share then?
Yeah, Mary, that's great. That'll be good.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary. All right, so my name's Ashley Packwood. Mary has introduced me, and I think Todd kind of did in the beginning too. I am the AmeriCorps member with JRBP and Stream Teams United. And due to that, I was able to volunteer with Mary and get to go out and experience paddle mow for the first time this year with my husband. And what I'm going to be doing for the next little bit here is kind of giving you an idea what it's like from a participant's point of view, especially a first-time participant. And one of the biggest issues for me heading out was that I was terrified of the size of the river. I grew up near the Piney River, Houston area, Houston, Missouri area, moved to the James River Basin area in high school. So I have not ever floated any kind of major rivers. And Stream Teams United, Mary in particular, has really thought about that because they definitely prepare you for what you're going to be getting into. They really extensively explain to you how you're going to be paddling across. They explain to you the different flags, the different signs you're going to be seeing, what they mean. And they explain to you all of the different signals that are done with the paddles and everything else. She mentioned Jody and Bill Miles. They are fantastic at really yelling if they need to get you across the river quickly. You'll probably hear a lot about the barges that are out there, and they are out there and they are big and kind of terrifying the first time you see one. But we experienced a few on our trip this year, and other than a little bit of mild turbulence, there was nothing crazy. We were able to get across the river quickly because we had someone up front that knew what they were doing. That's Jody typically, and it was very, very helpful. And once you're out there, it's not as big as it seems. I mean, you're moving compared to the James River. You're definitely in a much wider river. On one of our last days, we had to paddle straight across into wind, and it probably took 5 to 10 minutes to get across the whole river, which was an experience. But it's just not as overwhelming once you're out there, especially with the information you're given. And it's also not the kind of thing that you're going to have to just be killing yourself paddling the whole time. Now, Andrew and I made a mistake and stuck with our own 10-foot boats on the Missouri River this year, and probably won't do that in the future, but we were able to keep up with Jody. We were supposed to stay towards the front for our volunteer position, and that took some pretty extensive paddling. But Eric, that Mary showed a photo of earlier, is kind of the sweep boater, and he was able to stay back with a couple of our boaters that didn't want to go as fast, didn't want to have to constantly be paddling to keep up with everyone in the beginning of the group. And I know there was one woman that was on a paddleboard in the first day, and she wasn't quite as prepared for what it was going to be. He was more than happy to stay back with her. No one ever made anyone feel bad for being towards the back of the group because everyone wants to experience the river in a different way. And that's very achievable with this trip. Another big point I want to make is the kinds of people that come on this trip. And you all don't know him, so it wouldn't be as much of a point for me to make to you all. But if you ever get the chance to meet my husband, Andrew, he is an introvert, doesn't quite cover what he really is. He does not like people. He's very much closed off. He doesn't really want to be around anyone. He loved everyone on this trip. He had an absolute blast. He got to know almost everyone. He clicked with Mary immediately, and they hadn't hardly spoken before. There you go. And he got along with everyone. There was, as far as we were aware, absolutely no drama. And it's nice to think that there would never be drama, but with that large of a group, there could be. And we didn't experience anything like that. Everyone was friendly. Everyone was very open and just willing to talk to you about anything. I never felt awkward carrying on conversations. And Andrew even mentioned to me there were a few people in the beginning he wasn't sure about. And by the end, he says he cannot think of one person that he didn't like. And I wanted to get him in here to actually say this to you all, but like I said, he's an introvert and he absolutely refused. So that didn't happen. But it was just an amazing experience with all of these people. It was an absolute blast. Everyone meshed so well together. Personalities didn't seem to collide. There were times where different groups would break off, but you could bounce around to different groups of people. I always felt welcomed. I always felt invited. And from what I understood of everyone else, I think everyone really did. I don't think that I was seen as any kind of volunteer or anything like that. I think people just saw me as someone who was part of it that they wanted to be around. And the next point I'm going to go to is the value of this trip. And I have to say that I don't know where you're going to go and get a trip for this kind of money that covers and takes care of everything the way this Paddle Mo trip does. You have multiple options. Of course, the option I went on was, it ended up being 6 days, 5 nights, because we did choose to be there for the first day where we're not actually on the water. That was for the Katy Trail event that we had that evening with Magnificent Missouri, where we got to introduce Mary. I was there to help out, handing out wristbands and everything like that. It was an absolute blast. And your camping, your food, everything is taken care of for you. That ground crew is not something that a normal person's going to be able to have, where every morning, if we were moving campsites, we'd pack up our gear, throw it in the box, and toss it at someone. Obviously a little more friendly than that, but someone took care of everything for you. The only thing that we really had to do for ourselves on the whole trip was setting up and breaking down our camps in the morning and evening. And once you've done that one time, it gets pretty quick over time. And you don't have to pack everything away too tightly, because you're gonna be getting it out again the next day. It's all pretty easy. And Mary mentioned this, and I am gonna talk about it a lot. The food on this trip. I feel like many people expect on a prepaid trip where you're gonna be getting food and everything, you're expecting a lukewarm buffet, sandwiches, just whatever they can get a hold of. And Mary did not do that in the slightest. We were provided excellent food, local food. Many people will be excited to hear that Mary brought out toasted raviolis, because you can't be in St. Louis and not bring out the T-Rabs. Andrew and I, my husband, we've talked about this certain breakfast we had from a restaurant called Avant Gardens that catered for us. And it was, as far as I'm aware, the best meal I've ever had. They homemade some everything bagels, and everything they had was locally grown. They had a roasted red pepper spread on that bagel that was incredible. I don't think anyone there that day didn't absolutely love that. And that was just a very cool experience. We had one night where, I'm gonna check my note here because I want to make sure I get this right. Bethlehem Village. They provided some wine for us. We had a catered meal that evening. Basically, the point I want to get across is you are not getting cheap, let me scrape by, figure out what I can do for you food. We had tacos one day. We got off the river and we walked up to a little taco place. Days that we had food on the river, it was, a lot of times it was sandwiches just because we didn't have a place to warm up, but it wasn't just, here's a little bit of meat and cheese. It was extravagant sandwiches with different flavors, different options. You were always given choices. One amazing thing they do as well, and I think most places are getting really good at this too, is they very, very easily and heavily cater to anyone who has any allergies, any food aversions, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free. Mary goes out of her way to help and figure out anything that she can for anyone. I feel like Mary goes out of her way to just make sure absolutely no one's excluded from anything on this trip. And I think she does an amazing job. I didn't quite mention the camping and how much fun it was at the campgrounds. We had a harmonica duel one night from Bill Miles that he chose to, and then another man that happened to be there for his bachelor party, which I thought was an awesome thing as well. And they got into a little harmonica duel. It was so much fun. Another night, somebody had a light up Frisbee, and we all stayed up playing Frisbee out in an open field. The night we camped at Klondike, people kind of broke off into different parties since it was a little more separated of a campground, but there were different fires, everything going on, that it was just an absolute blast. And I know that saying all of this is probably having a few of you thinking, well, where are the COVID precautions? And they were absolutely there. You saw in the photos of Andrew and I, that's what we were there to do. We wore gloves. Andrew ran a hand washing station, and I was the only one allowed to touch the water pouring station. We hung out during all the stops for that. Anytime we were within close quarters with each other, we wore masks. There was rarely ever indoor experiences other than some restrooms and things like that. And in my experience, we had very, very little to almost no issue of anyone being unwilling to work with it, unwilling to wear masks. And as far as Mary and I are aware, we came away without spreading anything from this trip. Everyone took the precautions. Everyone followed well. Everyone was very responsible about it. And it made for so much more of an enjoyable trip that everyone was just so willing to follow the guidelines and go along with it. And I skipped over this one too, and I'm going to have to come back. Mary goes out of her way to provide amenities for you at every location. Almost every night we were provided showers to get to. Mary was able to help out with anyone she could. She had backup supplies for people that needed them. I know at one point she even ran off and got some mouthwash for a woman that felt like she needed it. Mary bent over backwards for everyone. There were charging stations at every location. There was even one where we didn't have showers or a very good indoor space. Mary went out of her way to make sure we had a charging station set up for everyone to charge their phones. And for anyone else who may be curious, there is coffee every single morning. I only heard stories of this one, but Mary was telling me of an experience of a couple that wanted coffee at 4 a.m. And so she may not have gotten up and made it, but she made it accessible and able for them to get it. Basically, this trip is just one of the most amazing values that I can imagine. I've been on many vacations, I've planned vacations, and I always spend an outrageous, don't forget the coffee. Yes, Mary. It's very important. And I always spend double on my trips, and I have to do everything. I have to pack my own stuff every single day. I have to move my stuff. I have to figure out where I'm eating for every meal. I have to figure out what I'm doing every day. Mary and Stream Team have that planned for you. You know what you're doing every day. You're handed a journal, and it's written out for you what you're doing. Now, of course, you have to be flexible. We're on the river, and we are on river time. But you know that you're going to be taken care of, and you're going to be covered out there. And it was just an incredible experience, honestly. And I'm not just saying this because I'm part of this crew, but honestly, one of the most amazing things I've ever done in my life. Just, it does sound cheesy to say it was life-changing in so many ways. It's something that I intend to do every year that I'm able to. I plan to come back every option I can. My husband feels the same way. He wants to go back again. He's already made the comment, it's 2021, we get to go again this year. So I just can't imagine anyone that wouldn't enjoy this kind of trip and enjoy this kind of experience. It was just absolutely incredible, and I didn't have to do anything. Even as a volunteer, I hardly had to take care or do anything. It was all laid out, it was all set up, and Mary's and everyone else that helps, their hard work has paid off to make an incredible trip that I just don't even know how to talk high enough about, because it was something, when it was pitched to me, I wasn't expecting what came. I expected to be tired after a couple of days. I expected to not want to do the whole 5 days. I expected to be exhausted of floating, and I never was. At any point in time, I felt rested and happy the whole time just because I was outside, I was free, I was enjoying my time, and I was around people that enjoyed the things I enjoyed, that I could talk to and could be just on a team with, really, and float down the river with. And I think that's probably about it for me.
Thank you, Ashley. That's awesome. And that's great to hear, and I would say, I do a lot of work, but it's just a great team too. So thank you for the compliments. Like I said, it can't be done without, and all the volunteers that come out. So thank you, Ashley. Now we do have a video that was produced from this year that I think we were thinking about sharing. It's about 5 minutes long, and that would leave 10 minutes for questions. Do you think we have time to show the video? Brent's saying yes.
I do. I think we're good.
Todd, I believe you're on mute.
Okay, I think we are ready to answer some questions. I've got to turn off my YouTube here. There we go. Okay.
Also, we'll drop a link to the video in the chat feature. I know that it was probably a little glitchy and some audio issues for some folks. So if you want to check it out afterwards, we'll put the link in there as well.
I'll do that right now, actually. Here it comes.
So we had,
Oh,
go ahead, Todd. You can do the questions.
Well, the main question that I was going to answer was that, or Darlene had asked about whether or not you can paddle the current in a 15-foot boat. I know several people who use a boat that size on the current. Shouldn't have any problems with that, really. The current's a fairly forgiving river, and the stretch that Paddle Mo goes on, the upper current from Cedar Grove all the way down to the Round Spring area, is a really nice area to paddle. There's not a lot of major difficulties there. You know, just knowing to read a river is really the big key, but you shouldn't have any problems with that at all.
Mary, while you were talking, I kind of gathered up a couple questions, and this may prompt some additional ones from some of our viewers. You mentioned you guys had a chance to get out on some of the sandbars during low water time periods, like especially last year. Did you guys have any interesting finds, any kind of artifacts or anything like that?
Not the one thing that I know we've seen is petrified wood, and that mostly comes from Pelican Island. I can't recall this year, but I know a previous year, Eric, or well, I guess I won't mention, but someone found several arrowheads right when they got out of the river.
Oh, wow.
You know, so yeah, you
This
never know what you're gonna find on the river, right? But arrowheads, petrified wood.
There was a
Very cool.
participant that found, we weren't sure exactly what it was made out of this year, and actually the man that found it was from Springfield, which was kind of cool, but a fully intact, piercing red arrowhead. And I mean, it was a gorgeous arrowhead. I've never found an intact arrowhead, but one quite like this. It was stunning. And then Perry from Alpine Shops actually found 3 different pieces. He found an intact arrowhead, a partial arrowhead, and then a partial knife. And that was all on Pelican Island, along with a ton. I mean, there was just a ton of people that found, like, I don't know for sure that it was clear quartz, but clear rocks, and then also petrified wood. A lot of very cool petrified wood.
Well, yeah, the cool thing is, you know, it may not have even originated here. It may be from hundreds of miles upstream, just how big of a drainage area the Missouri River has. So I just think that beachcombing kind of stuff's fun. Also, I know some people might be wondering, how many miles per day are you guys paddling? How many hours per day? I know it's going to vary just depending on, you know, the distance between camps, but what's kind of an average?
Sure. So for the Missouri River trip, we typically get on the water around 9:30 in the morning. That's kind of the average, because we, you know, get up, breakfast around 7:30 or 8 by the time we get, and that's the thing, you are in a group, so it takes some time to get moving. We typically float though between about 9:30 to 4:30 p.m. And on the Missouri River, our number of miles ranges from, I think the most we do is 28 in one day, down to 12 miles the last day. And, you know, the river is going about 3 to 4 miles an hour. So it's really probably no more than 6 to 7 hours of actual paddling at the most on the longest day. And on the current river, I believe it's between 7 and 9 miles, which, you know, is not at all a challenging pace. And that's because we have different stops where we do the education.
Okay. So I know that folks are supposed to bring a lot of their own gear. Is there any type of specialized gear that people need to bring? And if they don't have specific types of gear, can they check gear out from you guys, borrow it from Alpine Shop or Stream Teams United? What about people that don't necessarily have, that aren't outfitted for this kind of thing?
Sure. And so we do provide like a packing list months in advance, like early summer, so that people will know, you know, 3 or 4 months ahead what we suggest that they bring. The Alpine Shop does have some supplies they can loan out to people. We really haven't run into that too much, though. I think people, you see a wide variety of, supplies and quality of things, but people have seemed to do pretty well with what they have, or maybe they get the supply list, 3-4 months in advance and have time to either find it or borrow it from other people. Now, I will say for the Missouri River trip, Alpine Shop has been great, and they've stepped up and said if someone needs to borrow a boat, or if someone has that 9 or 10-foot boat that's really going to be okay but struggle a little bit on it's going to be slower, they've offered to bring boats and let people borrow a longer boat, and so that's been fantastic.
Awesome. And I guess the last question I had, and again, this may prompt additional questions from people, but what are some of like the unique experiences or stories that are kind of burned into your mind? If you give us like what's your one example of like the greatest thing you've seen on paddle now, whether it's Ozarks or Missouri?
That would almost be a better question for Jody, because a lot of times I am running behind the scenes, making sure the next meal shows up. So that's kind of hard for me to come real quick, Brent, without thinking about it more. But
yeah, you're fine.
it was great. I will say that, the most recent thing just this year with 2020 was being able to figure out a way to do it, which was a challenge for sure this year, as you can imagine. It would have been easy to cancel, but we were able to figure out we can do this safely. But it was great to see everybody out on that first sandbar the first day, spaced out. And that was a place we hadn't been able to visit the previous 2 years because the river was too high. So I think that was really cool. And it's kind of along those bluffs like you saw. So that was just in recent times one of my favorite times of just being able to get out there and then explore that area.
I actually have somewhat of an answer to that question, Brent, that I actually did mean to mention because I feel like it could be a concern of people's, but it was a fun thing for me anyway. It did not happen often, but I happened to fall out of my boat, which happened to be a 10-foot sit on top kayak, and I was out in the middle of a very open river with very little bank at the time. And so if anyone's curious, Eric, who I mentioned before, was able to speed right up and help me get back in. But I had dropped a, oh my gosh, why can't I think? Radio. Thank you. Yes, I dropped a radio in and I went diving after it. And Bill let me know that so far he doesn't know of anyone that's ever recovered a radio. So I'll give myself a little bit of props for that one. But it was a lot of fun. It was hilarious. I have a story forever that I, as a volunteer who was supposed to be running some safety and everything else, was one of 2 people that fell in on this entire last trip. The other person was a paddleboarder, so they kind of get away with it. But it also wasn't that terrifying. The boat wasn't moving that fast. I just needed someone to hold it down so I could get in.
Yeah, that's a fun story for sure. Well, guys, if you have any more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Ashley, Mary, do you guys have any kind of final thoughts? Anything you want to plug real quick? Anything like that?
I would just thank everybody for taking the time to join tonight and hear about our story. And if you have any information, I think if you go to the Paddle Mo website, I believe my cell phone number is on there, my email, but I'm always happy to answer any questions if anyone's interested in this year's trip.
One more plug from JRBP really quick. March 24th is Give Ozarks Day. And I know that Paddle Mo and Stream Teams United, I know Stream Teams United is participating in that. JRBP is, of course, Watershed Committee. As Mary said, it's been a challenge for all these organizations for us to do our normal activities. We've had a great year in 2020, all things considered. We were able to do some great things. And now it's a year of recovery. So we're encouraging people to participate and Give Ozarks Day to help us raise funds. JRBP is raising funds for a fleet of canoes so we can do more ecotourism on the water and also all the supplies that go along with that, so we can duplicate in our own small way that amazing logistical skill that Mary has in running Paddle Mo. So look for that. We have information on our Facebook page and on other social media channels. Stream Teams United, follow them as well. but support these nonprofit organizations. We know you all support through membership, and we really appreciate that. And the Give Ozarks Day is a way to give back in many ways, and to keep on with this message, this ecotourism of connecting with what you protect. So, and don't forget our 37 North series. We have our outdoor education series coming up. That's on the last Tuesday of the month. Normally, there's a full schedule at Springfield Brewing Company. That's going to be physically distanced with all sorts of protocols. We're also pleased to announce a float series of our own in conjunction with 37 North, and that schedule is available as well. We're going to be floating from Lake Springfield down to Table Rock Lake, essentially lake to lake on the James over the summer. It's going to be a fantastic, really a fantastic experience for those that participate. Darlene and Ed asked about mask wearing. We generally, when we go out on the river, we're recommending that if you're in a close proximity or indoors, that masks obviously should be worn, especially following local protocols. When you're outdoors, if you can physically distance, that's something that we kind of leave it up to folks, the discretion. We certainly encourage folks to be safe as much as possible. But, you know, right now, some of the science seems to promote the fact that if you're outdoors and you can spread out relatively easy with air currents and other things like that, that the distance itself is safety, is safe. So we'll see what happens with more people getting the vaccine. Of course, that's going to make a huge difference. So we'll see what happens with that on there as well. All right, everybody, if there are no other questions or comments, thanks again to Mary and Ashley for a great presentation. Mary, thank you for taking time out of your evening, and Ashley too. Thank you to everybody for logging in. We've got one more series this spring, or one more session in the speaker series this spring. That's April 8th. I'll have more information. It's going to be relatively quickly because this would have normally fallen on Earth Day, and I know we're all going to be fairly busy on Earth Day with our JRBP Earth Day cleanup. But I'll get some information out about Curtis Copeland's presentation on GIS, his use of GIS here in the Ozarks. Brent, do you have anything else?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. No, I think I'm good. We again just appreciate everybody and hope that everybody gets to spend some time out with us on the water this year in 2021, whether that's at a cleanup or one of our 37 North floats. We've got all kinds of really neat stuff. And if you can't make those, we'll see you in the fall at the membership float. So, thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.